Have you ever noticed how some people are desperate to sell you on the idea of a strongman leader? This week, my blood is boiling because I've watched Canadian politicians and even the White House describe Viktor Orban as a genius and a strong leader. They are holding up Hungary as the ultimate playbook for the future, where you take over the courts, muzzle the media, and win elections by stoking pure, unadulterated rage. But here is the reality. That genius just lost the supermajority he spent 16 years rigging the system to keep. His grand ideology didn't collapse because of a war or some massive scandal, but instead, it was defeated by the rising price of bread and the undeniable stench of everyday corruption. Today, we are going to expose the 3 biggest lies his failure just proved, and we'll look at why this is actually fantastic news for your life here in Canada. And we're back. David Mercer here with a special edition of the Sanity Report. If you want this kind of deep dive delivered straight to your inbox every single week, we have a free newsletter, and you can find that link waiting for you in the description. Let's start with the first lie they're selling, which is the myth that the strongman formula is some kind of guaranteed, unbeatable path to permanent power. For over a decade, Orban was the global poster child for this movement, showing the world that you could seize the courts and control the media while using cultural rage to win election after election. Plenty of people in power right here in Canada loved what they saw, and they held up Hungary as proof that the new way to win was to invent an enemy and feed the anger. They wanted us to believe that you never had to talk about boring things like managing a budget, as long as you kept the public's fury at a boiling point. But that winning formula just hit a wall and lost. It didn't fall to a radical revolutionary, but to a former insider from Orban's own party named Péter Magyar, who essentially just showed up and started talking about basic competence. He pointed out the corruption everyone could see, and he focused on the actual cost of living that families struggle with every day. The pattern here is so clear it's almost a law of physics, because the rage machine works perfectly until the bills finally come due. When your rent and your grocery bills keep climbing while the roads are literally falling apart, you eventually stop asking for more anger and start looking for someone who actually knows how to fix a pothole. The strongman playbook has a very specific expiration date, and it only works until people realize they need something real from their government. And here's the kicker that most people miss. Orban's version of strength wasn't just a local failure in Europe. His favorite trick for projecting power was the veto, and that tactic has been quietly making your own groceries more expensive. Let's connect those dots. That brings us to the second lie, and this is the one that hits your wallet directly. We are constantly told that a strong leader who stands up to the world is good for his people, but in practice, it is much darker. The European Union operates under a rule called unanimous consent, which means that for any major decision to pass, all 27 member countries must agree. Orban turned that rule into a political weapon by threatening to veto everything from aid for Ukraine to climate policies, effectively blackmailing the EU into giving him money or letting him slide for breaking their rules. This isn't just some faraway drama happening across the ocean, because it has a direct impact on Canadian trade. Canada has a massive trade deal with the EU called CETA that is designed to eliminate tariffs and make the products you buy much cheaper. However, that deal has been stuck in limbo for years because it requires every single EU country to fully ratify it, and Orban's Hungary was a primary reason the agreement remained paralyzed. One person's strong stand was actually holding an entire continent hostage, which made your trade more expensive and much less stable. His loss changes the math for everyone. Suddenly, the door is wide open for Europe to function like a normal partner again, rather than a group held hostage by one man's next temper tantrum. A Europe that can actually make a collective decision is a much better partner for Canada on everything from securing trade routes to tackling the climate crisis. In the end, his strength was just a veto stamp that ended up costing you money. Now, think about that pattern for a second. It is the exact same logic as the first lie, and I call it the broken bus strategy. A leader breaks the steering wheel on purpose, then points at the resulting traffic jam and shouts about how strong he is for navigating the chaos he created. But what happens when the passengers finally realize the bus is broken? That brings us to the final and most important lesson of this whole situation. Myth versus fact. The shelf life of extremism. Let's break down the myths against the facts we just witnessed. The myth is that strongman politics is the inevitable future, and that democracy is too weak to survive. The fact is that Hungary just showed us that extremism has a very real shelf life. While it burns hot for a while, it eventually burns out because it cannot deliver basic goods. The myth is that politics has become nothing more than a culture war where the side with the most rage wins by default. The fact is that politics is, and always has been, about who can actually do the job of governing. People want leaders who can fix the roads, keep the schools open, and make life affordable, and rage is usually just a distraction used to cover up a fundamental failure to lead. It is the only thing you have left to sell when you can't actually deliver results for the people. The most important lesson from Hungary is the identity of the person who actually beats the strongman. He doesn't lose to a bigger, angrier version of himself, but instead, he loses to the person who walks on stage and tells everyone to stop shouting so they can talk about the budget. That is where the act runs out, and the performance ends when people stop watching the show and start checking the receipts. The single takeaway you need to remember is that extremism has a shelf life, and it is not an unstoppable force. The next time someone tells you we need a leader who will break all the rules to get things done, I want you to remember what happened in Hungary. They tried that exact playbook for 16 years, and it ended with the people voting for the guy who promised to just follow the rules again. If this breakdown helped you see through the noise, take a second to subscribe right now. And don't forget, you can get this full analysis in our free weekly newsletter with the link in the description below.
If you want more facts and less fear, hit subscribe. Check out the next breakdown wherever you're listening or watching. Stay sane, Canada.